DJ Leroy.
NightWatchman, how you doing, buddy?
We're good, man. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. So, NightWatchman, I understand that there will be a debate, I guess, next week between these two candidates running for president. What do you think?
Two old men fighting. I mean, you could just go to any old folks' home and see the same show. I mean, you know, fighting over the remote.
NightWatchman, why you doing?
That's the state of the country. Our whole way of being is based on two old guys fighting over the remote. So what are we gonna do?
Hey, yes, yeah, you as they say, NightWatchman, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot. All right. So, NightWatchman, we got a little show. We're gonna be bringing some heat, some fire, and who knows, someone may also be invited back to the cookout. What do you think?
All right, you know you're gonna have to pay royalties on that, right?
Oh God. Okay. So NightWatchman. Well, first we're gonna bring up a good friend of Soul Lounge Primetime. That can only be the one, the only Professor Emeritus. No, he's still working. That's right. He's still there. That is Wallace Ford II. I'm bringing him up. Yes. Oh, hey, NightWatchman, I got, you know.
There we are.
All right.
Yeah, watch that emeritus stuff, brother. Shoot, did you get a memo that I didn't get or something?
Emeritus means email, man. Emeritus means still with us.
Yeah, well, okay. All right, try and clean that up. Yeah, okay.
Maybe just barely, but you know, so we'll take out the emeritus. We feel, you know, we know you like to roll back the clock, so
yeah, exactly.
Emeritus, yeah, okay.
I think we're coming up on the 30th anniversary of his 20th birthday or something like that.
Oh yes. He does roll back the clock on that.
Yeah. I never got the math right on it, but
this year was the 24th. What was it? The 14th anniversary of my 60th birthday. That's
okay. All right.
Go. Beautiful.
That's a beautiful thing.
Well, NightWatchman, we have another guest, and this is the first time. So he's a virgin, the first time on Soul Lounge Primetime. You got a little something. Who we're gonna be bringing up?
He's on like every other channel. So he, journalist, author, cultural commentator. He's been on The Root, The Griot. You know, he's Black AF. He's the commander of the Black Air Force. So.
Michael, my brother. Right.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me. I want you to know right now that I'm stealing that. I'm the commander of the Black Air Force. That's mine.
Well, we're going to consider it a trade because we use invited to the cookout on a regular basis. So, so you could, you know, we're gifting back to you, Commander of the Black Air Force.
I accept the trade.
Well, you know what? Let's get it popping because while we were off camera, right? Professor Wallace was talking about some similarities about this time and also that little country out there in Europe called Germany. So, Professor Wallace, please expand, man.
Right. It's Ford, by the way, just for the record. You can call me Wallace. You can call me Ford, but he doesn't have to call me nothing. But it's not Professor Wallace. Yes, my students make that mistake all the time. But as I was mentioning, and good to meet you there, brother. Which was, you know, I obviously did not have a lot to do, and I was watching over a period of a few days a Netflix series of documentaries with respect to the rise and fall of Adolf Hitler. And you know, one of the things that you know, there's a few things that struck me. One of them, of course, was that as he was trying to advocate for the National Socialist Party, the Nazi Party, one of their mottos was "Make Germany Great Again." And it's like, you know, I guess if I was a German Shepherd or something, my ears would just perked up. Is it what? You know, because gee, that really, really sounds familiar. But another thing that was mentioned, which is that the Nazi Party never had more than 38% of the representatives of the Reichstag, I guess it's called, the parliament that they had, and they never had more than 38%. And so when we look here in the United States, and you can say, okay, then make America great. Don't get too caught up with respect to that, but it's important to pay attention to similarities when they just jump off the page. But the other part is that people, the Republican Party has not won the popular vote in a national election. I think one time in this century. I think George W. Bush in his second his reelection campaign. But and before that, you can go back years in terms. And if you look in the Senate, all of the Republican senators in the country do not represent 50% of the American population, and the list kind of goes on. And so you say, how could a minority of people necessarily take over a country? Well, it's there right now, and I think if we we fault ourselves if we don't pay attention to what is going on. And I'm particularly concerned when I'm seeing young, particularly younger, but sometimes older as well, black people saying, well, Biden hasn't done, the Democrats haven't done that much, and maybe Trump wouldn't be that bad. And it's as if Trump is telling you who he is, right? That old Angelo line, when people tell you who they are, believe them. He's telling you who they are, and somehow you think he's not talking to you. He's not talking about you. He's talking about some other black people. He's talking about some other vermin. He's talking about some other poisons in the blood. He's not talking about me. Couldn't possibly be talking about me, because and the I guess the last thing I'll just say at the moment, this incredible insult that says when I got convicted, more black people like me, because
yes,
like most of us get convicted, right? Like most of us go to prison, and it is but it's just like, it insults you to your face, and you still say, yeah. So I'm very, one more time, very concerned about this upcoming election. And last thing, if I might mention this, Curtis, and I will then be quiet.
Okay.
Which has to do with this whole issue of age, which we were talking about coming. So Biden's 81. Trump is 78. Maxine Waters is 85. Okay. You go through the list of black leadership in Congress, and there's some younger ones coming in now, fine, thank goodness. But we had a lot, particularly, the members of the original Black Caucus. They hung around until their cold dead fingers, I think the expression was. I mean, right here in New York City, and God bless him. I wrote speeches for Charlie Rangel, but he was 80 something years old. And so you back up any leadership. Younger leadership come out, you just back them up, and they go into other pursuits, maybe foundations or investment banking or real estate or whatever. And so you lose leadership, and you decimate the next generation. And that is what has happened in the black community in terms of leadership. As you look around the country, I was just stunned. But she's been there 33 years, and God bless her. But there's got to be somebody in all of Los Angeles. There's got to be at least one person, who could do half the job that she's doing now, and we have to watch out for that. I mean, we certainly want to give proper respect to everybody who's been in the struggle and what have you. But then sometimes it's time to move on and
cultivate and move on. Absolutely. Yeah. And Michael, it's truly an honor, a pleasure for you to join us here at Soul Lounge Primetime. And like I said, you can't even make this stuff up. I mean, I love one of the comments that you had there, the chutzpah, the cockiness of the British. I mean, but I want you to address some of what Professor Ford was saying, and put your spin on this bad boy.
Yeah, that is, he was right. When there are a lot of similarities with what happened in Germany during the rise of the National Socialist Party. And one of the things we have to first of all remember is that, again, a majority of people agreeing with in this case the Republican Party isn't necessarily all that's necessary is for most of the people to do nothing. In fact, like most of the stuff that happened to black people throughout history, Jim Crow was because the good white people did nothing. If there were good white people, the
Mm-hmm.
good white people did nothing about slavery. The good white people, like most white people, didn't own slaves, but they agreed to live in a country with labor through the force of violence, right? So the agreement, a tacit agreement to do nothing, is just as dangerous as waving a swastika or wearing that red hat. Like, you're on that side because there's one side fighting against it. And if you're not fighting against it, if you're silent, and a lot of people might even be vocally against it and then go in the voting booth and cast a ballot for that. But there are a lot of similarities. And the other similarities, just remember now, there were some Jewish people in the National Socialist Party in Germany in the 1930s and the 1920s who was like, yeah, I agree with them. Like, and ended up in concentration camps, just like there is a small, tiny minority of Black people who, I always call them contrarians because they think they're smarter than everybody else. And because a lot of times they think that either white people are just inherently smarter than Black people, or they all have this belief that, like, I'm smarter than all the Black people who know things and read books and who agree on things, and my grandmama who read the paper every morning, I'm smarter than them. And so I agree with that sentiment that there are a lot of similarities, and apathy is one of the biggest dangers that we're facing.
But and the irony of that comparison is that there's been some recent talk about how Nazi Germany patterned what they were going to do off of America, because at the end of the day, America invented gaslighting. You talk about guys going to stand around and they're going to write this document saying all men are created equal, and like half of them are slave owners. So it always still comes back to that American original sin.
Well, eight of the first 10 presidents were slave owners, to be real clear about that. And and their names are all emblazoned all throughout the American universe at this point. But the thing, again, and just one last thing on this whole business with respect to the similarities, if you will, between what was happening in the 30s in Germany, is that, again, obviously I had time on my hands, and I knew some of this already, that Hitler patterned the segregation of Jews when the Nazis took power, straight out of the U.S. playbook. Okay, but he also took the extermination of Jews out of the U.S. playbook as it pertained to the indigenous people here in this country. And he said, he used to watch westerns all the time, Western movies. No, he really did. He said, that's how we do it. That's how we do it. And he was particularly intrigued by the reservations, and all those kinds of things. And of course, we still have those things, sadly, to this very day. So it's people say, oh, come on, you're just kind of grasping at straws. But as my brother was just saying a few moments ago, you have to pay attention to these details. We really, really do. I don't want my 27-year-old son 2-3 years from now trying to find a way to get to Canada or someplace just because it got bad real quick. Because in Germany it got bad real quick. And to the point again, whoever the good people were in Germany, the good people stayed quiet until it was too late.
No doubt. And one of the things, certainly, Michael, I mean, your book is brilliant. I love your narratives. As a matter of fact, I don't really read. I actually listen. Audiobooks, because my wife is a voiceover actress who does audiobooks and whatnot. So, Black AF history. I mean, please. I love my country, warts and all. Most Black people do. Can we not just have an honest conversation about this? Why does it make them uncomfortable, and why should we care that it makes them uncomfortable, man?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to be honest. I never understood what I love my country means, right? Like, no one's ever explained it to me. Like, do you love the people inside the boundaries of the United States more than you love other people? Or did you like the dirt more than you like, or do you like the Constitution more than you like? Because we know all of those things have flaws, but most of all, I think the idea of patriotism, right? Because
Mhm.
first of all, it's always been dangerous to Black people. So like, why do we have to like justify what we say by loving my country?
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
have a leak in my in one of my bedrooms.
Mhm.
And when I call someone to fix it, I don't say, "Hey, I want you to know I love my house, but there's something wrong with my roof and I want you to fix it. Hey, plumber, I love my house, but I got a leak in my back toilet that I need fixing," right? So I think, first of all, if you can demonstrate that you love something, right?
Mhm.
By criticizing it, by wanting to make it better, by
Mhm.
working toward making it better, and by sacrificing to make it better. Like, I don't have to say I love America
Mhm.
because, part of my criticism is like, I live in this house and I'm trying to make it a better house. And how I my emotional connection to this arbitrary word that you call love has no relevance to me, right? Like,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
country was not a democracy
Yes.
until
Yes.
Black people made it one. This country was not like everything this country have. It was the greatest economy in the world because it was based on our free labor. And so I don't even think Black people ever have to say, "I love this country." Like,
Mm.
but we know this country doesn't love us. And so I think criticizing something, like if your mama love you, she's not going to let you do certain things. She's going to take corrective actions
Mm.
when you're
Mm.
doing something wrong. That's the way you demonstrate loyalty and love toward something or a thing.
Absolutely. Michael, thank you. I needed that talking to because you know what? I have blindly said that. And I think sometimes, Michael, I would say that not to, let's say, if I'm in mixed company, not to make the other feel uncomfortable.
Well,
Uh,
of course, your very presence makes people uncomfortable.
mm,
We have to understand that. Particularly once you go there, it's okay if you want to talk about Willie Mays, may he rest in peace. But if you start talking about, the injustices and the disparities and what have you in this country, then now you've gone there. Now that you've
mhm,
gone there, and so it is, and so just by our very presence, it's a reminder, particularly if we raise certain issues, as Michael was just saying, then yeah, it makes people feel uncomfortable. But I was looking at it the other day, and Michael, I'm sure you agree. I've spent a good part of my life making these people uncomfortable, and will continue to do so. And I would hope there's a day when I'm not, because the truths have been generally accepted, and we're all working to try and make this place a better place, as they say. As we speak right now, that's certainly not what's happening. That's
mhm,
certainly not that's not what's happening at all.
mhm.
So we have a ways to go. Yeah, I don't even know what that means anymore. Ways to go, because we engaged in such self-demeaning, self-destructive, self-appalling approaches to ourselves, and in terms of what we popularize. And I don't want to sound like the cranky old man in the room and what have you, but the if you listen to the lyrics and just the presentations that we see in popular music these days, white people can just sit back and say, you can just degrade yourselves. We don't even need to do anything. We don't have to talk bad. The way you talk bad about yourselves, and whether it's bitches and hoes and all of that stuff, and like, it's cool. It's cool. And as I said, I teach at Medgar Evars College, a predominantly Black school, and in Bed-Stuy, and the culture that these students, these young people, are absorbing is difficult. It's difficult to see where that's going to take them. It's difficult to see where it's going to take them. But we're kind of doing it to ourselves, and so yeah. So I'm not going to name names of entities entertainers and what have you, because I know you want to keep this show on the air. So I would just say that you know what I'm talking about, and you just turn on, and it's you can't, where people don't respect themselves, and I don't think you necessarily have to be a member of the Fruit of Islam or something, for goodness sake, but some certain basic self-respect that our parents and grandparents had for themselves, and there were lines that you just didn't cross. Now there are no lines.
Gotcha.
There are no lines, and so as a result, we go this way, we go that way. People kind of thought when Barack Obama became president that was somehow, the millennium had come, and Michael, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts with respect to it, because Barack Obama was an historical accomplishment, no doubt, first Black president. But anybody who thinks that Barack Obama, aside from being the first Black president, was an agent of true change, wasn't paying attention. That was never who he was. And you look at what he's been doing since he left the presidency. That's not who he is. Never was who he is. We don't have that agency of change out there anymore. It's more an agency of trying to just find a way.
Yes, gotcha.
Anyway.
Well, you know what? Before I let you answer that, Michael, a thing that I have to say, and I don't care what people say, but for me, the greatest band ever is Earth, Wind, and Fire. That's what I will say. Okay.
That is the safest comment I've ever heard.
No, hold it. Now, Michael, let him know that is not the safest comment, because remember, you even had to qualify it in your comment. But go ahead.
Yeah, I do think that Earth, Wind, and Fire is the greatest band ever.
Yes.
I will go back to, I think part of what we think is the popular culture sometimes is not, so I am a fan and a student of hip hop, right? But I think that what you see, and I used to work in radio from when I was in high school until when I was in college, and then even after college, right? And I remember when hip hop kind of first came on the scene, right? And I was working at a different radio station, and at that radio station, the DJ could play whatever they wanted, right? So sometimes you play, one kind of music one time, then you play another kind of music, and then by the time I went to college, they had this label list, and they would kind of assign different factions of music, and then you could choose what you wanted out of them. And then by the time I graduated college, it was just all corporate, right? Like the corporations set the playlist. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times we think this is what youth culture and Black music has become, and it's just what white people have curated for us to listen to, right? Like what you see on TV is not hip hop. Is not what most of the artists are producing, right? If you go to like an open mic or a live, thing, like most of the people who rap aren't rapping about that kind of stuff. It is just what has been curated to present to the world a version of us, right? Like it cannot be, and I know this sounds like a conspiracy theory, but there cannot, just think about this, right? The media industry, especially the record industry, is linear now, right? So the cheap people who own the record companies and Spotify and the streaming services own the movie companies. It is impossible to believe that those billion-dollar corporations are choosing all the same version of Black people. And this one version now, right? There is no equivalent to Sexy Red on the other side. There used to be smart, conscious rap. There used to be, intelligent rap about history. And then there was some gangster rap when rap music was controlled by Black people.
Yeah.
It is impossible to believe that. Nobody did any of the other stuff and just kept doing the gangster stuff and the raunchy stuff. I know they haven't, right? But that is what those billion-dollar corporations who have all the money to research, all the money to go find talent, that is the version of us that they want to present. So I would challenge the fact that that's what this generation is. Like, that's what they are showing of this generation, right? And a lot of times, like, you cannot be those raunchy rappers who saying B and H. You can't not be that famous with black people buying that music, right? Like, you cannot be you can't have a number one hit that's only black people buying that music. That's what that version of us is supported mostly by white people.
Well. Let me just say this, because I'm gonna have to jump for this medical appointment. Michael, it's nice to meet you, and hope to continue discussions. I'm reminded of a quote from that famous black playwright William Shakespeare, right? But there's a quote from Julius Caesar, right? It says, "The fault, dear Brutus, is not in our stars, but in ourselves, that we are underlings." And I just do believe that we can exert more control just as a community, as a people, than we do. We don't have to do these kinds of things, and it's not just taking root. You see young girls walking down the street with dressed in a way that it's like it's a 12-year-old girl dressed like she's a 30-year-old woman, and there's something that we need to do differently. But just let me just say that. The struggle continues. I thank you very much for bringing me back on the show. It's been a while. Hopefully I haven't been whitelisted or whatever.
well, hold on. So back up for 1 second. I got to ask it, because I know you're leaving. So, Michael, will he be invited back to the cookout?
Yeah, he'll always be invited to the cookout.
All right. Okay. I don't eat pork. That's all.
Neither do I. So I'm good.
Wow. Okay. Professor Ford, thank you, my brother.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Yeah.
Beef ribs.
There you go.
well, Night Watchman, do tell me, because you are also a fan of hip hop. So what are your thoughts in terms of?
Well, I agree with what Michael's saying, is that you have to dig deeper to unpack this, because let's face it, we've had corporate rap for the last 20 years has been pretty much corporate controlled rap. The hip hop industry has been dominated by a handful of labels, and those handful of labels are owned by companies. And if you look behind that ownership, you'll find a lot of cross ownership between people who own those labels and people who own things like prisons. Not that they're saying that there's any connection, but we have to look at these things. We go back to Ava DuVernay's stunning documentary 13th. Really unpacks a lot of the the levers behind things, the connections between money and politics, between money and prison pipeline, so there are a number of things, and that's why we're dealing with this whole eracism that they like to call critical race theory. But I want to talk to Michael a little bit more about the positive side, because Michael has been able to be have an intelligent discourse about both being black and race issues, and also do it in a way that's unapologetically black, the Black Air Force. In fact, we're going to try to get you in the boot camp for the Black Air Force, Curtis.
Wow.
So we got the commander in chief here. Now you're still going to have to, get up at 6 a.m. and, do the 3-mile runs and all that. But,
well, Night Watchman, that please, for historical facts and historical accuracy, that my uncle, Cecil Curl, was a Tuskegee Airman. He was a mechanic.
Yeah, we're not talking about that Air Force.
Wow. Michael, man, throw me a lifeline. So,
yeah, man. We'll take him. We'll take it easy on him during his basic training. Right?
But
You
Michael,
let him listen to some Earth,
we
Wind, and
want to
Fire.
roll back your origin story because you've been able to find a place in the media. Number one, you've been able to grow up in the rise of the I guess the confluence of internet media now really kind of surpassing mass media, or at least equaling it. We're in an era where we see, like in sports, where the podcasts have now taken over, where they're dominating the network offerings, and we have people who are able to do it in a way that they're part of the Black Air Force. They're unapologetically Black about what they're saying, and so talk to us a little bit about navigating using Black culture in a Black way, and still having it infused with depth of thought and perspective and knowledge.
Yes.
So
And
I always
humor.
thought,
And humor.
I never thought that there was a lack of that. I grew up, reading Greg Tate, and so like I still consider that my Cult Nats meets Freaky Deek as my North Star. And so I was always like, I don't know anything different. Like I've always black people have always been smart to me. Black people have always been intelligent to me. Black people have always had intelligent, smart conversations and found ways to infuse that into the national conversation. And so, like, I don't know if I consciously made a choice. I think, like, just the way I was raised, right? I don't know if I just made like small little life choices. Being a professor, writing about the stuff that I was interested in, and finding ways to do it, and also not necessarily being that interested in talking about these things to white people, right? Like I think part of a thing is like you make a specific choice to have an audience whenever you write, and like I had really no interest. Like I don't think there's anything better about like the New York Times or the Washington Post. I've written for both of those, right? But like I don't think that they're like necessarily have a better audience, or it's I don't feel like it's more laudable to write for those people, right? Like, and so one of those things is not seeking out the confirmation of whiteness. I've never had that. And so it's not like I rejected it or chose a hard road or made a revolutionary choice. Nah, it was just me. Like, if anybody, you got to blame my mama for raising me like this. Because other than that, right? Like, I was just like a person who was trying to, as a writer, I was just saying stuff, and I knew. I always say that. You know how if you've ever been in a room or and heard a sound and other people didn't hear it, and you say, well, maybe I'm going crazy. Like I've always written from the perspective, like I'm talking to Black people, not to tell them things or not to be the voice for Black people. I am writing to let you know that like all those things you hear and you think that they're doing to you, you are not crazy. Yeah, you hear it. It's true. I heard it too. We all hear it. And here is those things on paper so that you can know that you're not going crazy. That's literally like what the original term for gaslighting referred to.
Absolutely. And Michael, throughout the book, you have some incredible phrases that I'm sorry, I got to take. Night Watchman, we're taking a couple. Okay, like seasoned salt-seeking seafarers, baby. I got that, baby. I got that. Okay.
All
okay.
Right.
Yes.
But alliterative, also, very nice.
But also loving the cockiness of the Brits, man. The mofos, even though they were totally incompetent, they felt that they could do it. They could do it. So is that what continues to this day? That they just think that, you know, we are and we will and you will actually see it in the actions that we do it.
Yeah, when you think about it though, right? One of the things I always point out, right? Because when I talk to students or when I talk to like groups of people, and they have like, you know, they concoct these stories of these ideas about like how these people have conspired to do these things, and they have these grand conspiracy theories. And I was like, nah, well, I mean, if you look throughout history, like there is no need to ascribe a certain level of super intelligence to white people, because if you look at throughout history, right, they really kind of failed at almost everything. When you think about, just think about this, right? Like, think about this. There is nothing that has ever been done to a group of people in the history of the world that hadn't been done to black people in America. Everything that you can think of. And they really still couldn't extinguish us or make us compliant or get us to like do what they want us to do. Like they were even incompetent at oppression, right? Like, and when you think about like even like education, right? Like when you think about us coming here with no language, no family, no one to teach us the language, and we learned and dedicated so much to educating ourselves, and they like to say that we don't value education, but they had to write laws to stop us from educating ourselves. But that didn't work. And even after emancipation, we never talk about the racial terrorism that defined Reconstruction, but we never talk about this, right? So you know what they did more than lynched people, what they did more than burn churches, like 10% of all the black schools in the United States were burned in like an 8-year period from like 1865 to 1876, right? Wow. So they tried to stop us from educating ourselves, and it didn't work. Remember now, like the majority black constitutional delegation from South Carolina in 1868, you know, they had to come back to the Union, and to be admitted to the Union, they had to rewrite their constitution. And South Carolina was a majority black state, so the constitutional delegation was majority black, and they created the American education system as we know it, right? Like free public mandatory schools, with a superintendent that were offered education to anybody who lived in the state that did not exist before black people created it. Right. And so like you think about the separate but equal, the burned schoolhouses, the spitting on our kids that wanted to integrate, like they were incompetent at stopping us from educating ourselves. And that's part of what this, to get back to what you were asking, what's going on with this CRT thing, this anti-woke thing, is that right? They see us gaining. Just think about everything that they have tried for 400 years hasn't worked. And so their last resort is, well, what if we just stop them from telling the truth, make the truth illegal, right? Because they know like everything else that they've tried, we beat it. And they couldn't stop it. And so like this is kind of, you know, it's sad, but it's kind of funny in that this is what they've resorted to. Like they're just gonna make Black history illegal. I just finished an article about South Carolina banning AP Black study, AP African American studies.
Wow.
And everybody was you know, been talking about it. And you know, South Carolina is the state of Black history. 40% of all enslaved people came to South Carolina. And so when people were talking about that, right? But they didn't dig a little bit deeper. If you dig a little bit deeper, you understand that when they banned AP African American Studies, it meant that there was no Black history class in the state of South Carolina. There was no accredited Black history class. So even students who went through high school wanting to learn Black history couldn't take a class in Black history. They have AP AP European Studies. They have regular European Studies. They have a class called Western Civilization, right? They have German studies. They have Chinese culture, but no Black history in the state with the most Black history.
Wow, wow, wow.
And that still will not stop us, right? And so I'd never ascribe a level of intelligence or, ability to it, because what we've been able to do in just surviving and thriving always shows like they're really kind of incompetent.
Gotcha. And so I have to tell the audience, occasionally I will be doing some inside baseball. I'll be making references to the book, especially one of the things, if I had a bat, that particular racist rooster would be killed. Okay, I'm just telling you. Okay, so Night Watchman, I saw that you shaking your head, especially when he talked about South Carolina. Thoughts?
Well, South Carolina, I mean, he's right on the mark. Such a rich place for our history. When I think of South Carolina, I think of Robert Smalls, and I also think of. So one of the things I think about Robert Smalls, and I think about Black culture, we have certain superpowers that sometimes we don't recognize, and one of them is humor. So in Robert Smalls' case, Robert Smalls is a slave. He's on a ship. He was able to be that guy that, basically took the boats out in the harbor around Charlottesville. And one day he's on the boat and he's joking around with other slaves because he does such a good job that the white slave masters they didn't even hang around. They just let him hang out on the boat because where are they going to go? So he makes fun of the captain. He puts the captain's hat on and he does an imitation, which makes all the other slaves laugh because that's what we do. We use humor to get ourselves through situations. And then that joke led to an idea. It's like, I could imitate the captain. That means we could take this boat and ride it out of here if we do it at night when people can't really see. And that's how he ended up basically taking the boat out of slavery. So we always think about people running from slavery and running from dogs, but we don't talk about the people who escaped from slavery. Robert Smalls took a boat out of slavery. Frederick Douglass took a train out of slavery. Boxcar Brown actually FedExed himself out of slavery to Philadelphia. And Sojourner Truth just walked. She didn't run. She just got up one day. It's like I'm out of here, and literally walked up. And she was enslaved in New York, so she just walked up about a half a mile up the road and found some actual friendly white people and said, I need to stay with y'all until we end this slavery, which happened in about a year. This is 20, 30 years before the Civil War in New York. So we've always found inventive ways to get ourselves out of situations, and our superpowers have always been imagination and humor. And that's what I think about when I think about South Carolina.
Well, you know what? When we talk about some of the, let's say, history books, I remember, Michael, I'm in New York, right? I'm reading this history book, and it's about the Civil War and about Lincoln being on a riverboat and looking at some chained Africans and feeling sad, feeling empathy. But I'm understanding that wasn't necessarily the case.
Yeah. Yeah, we know Lincoln said, he before he was elected, he said, I just want to assure y'all, there's nobody that feels more tied to white supremacy to me. Trust me, I'm a white supremacist.
Wow.
If as far as this country is, there must be a hierarchy, and I am in favor of white people being superior, right? He assured people that's why he was elected, right? Because that was the fear. Literally, the worry about being elected was he might not be racist enough to be president. And so he became president by assuring people, like he wrote a letter to the New York Times. You can Google it if you're listening to this, called Mr. Lincoln and Negro Equality. Right. It's in the New York Times. You can look on the New York Times, what they call the Times Machine, which goes back and pulls up any article that they ever had. And he wrote a letter to the New York Times saying, like, look, I know there's been these rumors about me, giving freeing the slaves and giving Negroes equality. Let me assure you that that is not the case. Right. He wrote this himself. Right. And then remember that, like as the Night Watchman was saying, right, like we talk about the Underground Railroad, which is not how most enslaved people escape. Like it's like white people found out about the Underground Railroad, like they found out about CRT, and now then it was the only way that we taught Black history was CRT, just like the only way that Black people escaped slavery was the Underground Railroad. Once white people found out about it, which relatively speaking was responsible for a very small amount of people escaping versus the other ways. And one of the other ways, right, like you got to remember, right, like it wasn't no like this. If you were enslaved, you didn't get no map to know like where the free states are, right? You might not even know like what a free state is, right? So a lot of enslaved people, and one of the stories of everybody who reads the books asked me about this story, was they just got away from white people. Like you got to remember, like this country wasn't as developed as it is now. Like so 10 miles from where you were or 5 miles from where you were might be just the forest, right? And so like researchers are still kind of excavating and researching this area called the Great Dismal Swamp. They think like somewhere it might have been 100,000 free people, Black people living there, like in communities. They had houses, they farmed, right? They just went to places white people were. And one of my favorite quotes is that somebody says, hey, it's just some Black people that can't nobody own.
Yes.
And one of them was a man named Forrest Joe, and Forrest Joe lived in one of these eras. And what was interesting about his story is that like white people were terrified of him. That like he was a national story for 3 years, and they had posses looking out for him. But the interesting thing, going back to what you said, Night Watchman, is the superpower, right? So they used to make up these stories. Oh, he know magic and he's a ghost and he's so fast that he can avoid bullets. Well, one of the things that Forrest Joe did is like he snuck onto some white people's farm, stole their lead, melted it down, and made it into like a shirt. And so 200 years ago, this dude had invented a bulletproof
body armor.
vest.
Wow. Yes.
But the white people said it must be magic. And even the enslaved people on plantations would give him information and give him hints about when the white people were coming. I did a podcast on some of these stories, and on the comedian Roy Wood Jr. played Forrest Joe, and Joy Reid played like the person who was giving the news during that time. But it is one of my favorite stories. You're right. Like our intelligence, they make it into magic because they can't believe that we're intelligent or that we're smarter than them or we can outwit them. So it must be magic. It must be he must know that voodoo or something. Nah, he was just smarter than everybody else. But the interesting thing about Forrest Joe is that the reason that story is not just interesting. It is that the way that they caught Forrest Joe was for the town people to agree to pay for a group of people that was dedicated to hunting him and making sure no other slaves escaped. And that was America's actual first police force.
Wow. So yeah, as the posse, huh?
Yeah.
For sure. And Michael, certainly I want to really get into the book itself, but there's so many other things we have to talk about. So Night Watchman, we're probably gonna have to have him back again.
Back
And
back
again.
back to the
And
cookout. Maybe we'll actually do our next show with him at a live cookout. That's what we should do.
Indeed. Well, Michael, you definitely have to then tell me some of the historical facts that you have in the book. How did you decide on actually putting them in the book? What was your process, man?
Well, I worked with a historian, Blair Kelly, and so if you haven't read the book, for those who are listening, it's formatted like a textbook, right? Like
Yes.
there's unit quizzes at the end.
That's right. And those quizzes are on fire. But go ahead.
Right. So there's quizzes at the end of every chapter. So what we did is imagine, like, what if there was an actual class on the real Black history? And so we split it up into, I think we initially had 13 chapters. I think there's 24 in the book, but we initially had 13. And we said, what stories would we tell about this story? Like, for instance, we did a chapter on, like we like to call slave revolt. Like, one of my favorite subjects in history is slave revolts. I could do a whole book on them, but we had to confine it. But I also understand that, like, the revolt, like grabbing machetes and chopping up the master, is not the only kind of revolt. So we did a chapter called Survival and Resistance, right? Like that was what our ethos was to get through slavery: survive and resist, right? So we chose the story. We broke it up into chapters and then chose which stories that we wanted to keep. There's some, man, like, I'm sorry I couldn't even put into the book. Like there's some I had to include. Like, one of my favorites was the German coast uprising in 1811, but it's some, like, there's stories, just like most revolts came on slave ships, on the ships before they even got here. Wow. And I wanted to tell some of those stories, but it was just not enough time, right? So that's how we kind of chose it. We wanted to, like, whatever chapter you land on, it's not necessarily that you don't necessarily have to read the previous chapter, right? Or the chapter ahead of it, right? Like, you can sit down, choose a period in history, and learn about that period and what Black people were doing and thinking and finding out about themselves during that period.
Gotcha.
So have you been banned in Florida yet?
I don't know. Like, I don't know. See, the problem with this book, right, is that it made a lot of people mad. So it might have been banned in some schools. But the problem that they have with it, and I haven't heard a single person refute the actual content and the facts in the book, right? So like, I've had people email me and say, you must hate white people, or why do you hate America?
Wow.
But they never refute the flat facts of the book.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to ban something that you can't disprove.
Yes, exactly. And Night Watchman, we love some trivia, right? So on that note, January River. What am I talking about?
I have no idea.
Michael, because you did say that they are bad at naming things, correct?
Yeah, that's that's literally the translation of Rio de Janeiro, right? Like, when they discovered Portugal, it's like, what we gonna name it? We got here in January is a river. Let's name it Rio de Janeiro, I guess. Like, they got to Florida during the time called the Feast of Flowers, so let's name it La Florida. Plus, there's a lot of flowers around it, so let's name it The Flowers. There's a running joke in the book how bad white people are at naming things. And so, like, we go through, like, every time something gets a name, I was like, see, I told you, they're terrible at naming things.
Absolutely. And of course, Brazil itself. Right?
Yeah, Brazil is just, there's a Brazil tree, and it was like, it's a lot of these Brazil trees. Let's just name it Brazil, I guess.
And Lord knows, so certainly we heard the narrative in terms of, let's say, coming out of the church, in terms of enslavement, the original sin, that, well, let's say black folk or whatnot, they have no place to run to, so they seem the best. And we certainly don't want to bring any damn Moors back here to Portugal, because we already kicked their butts out of here. So thoughts in terms of the complicity of the church in the trade.
Well, the church the church ran the world when America was discovered, right? Like that's who, was funding the Portuguese explorers. That's who justified slavery, right? Like the whole slavery, human slavery was originally justified, like the race-based African slave trade, right? Was justified by, the Pope agreed, like, well, if you I'll take the tithes if you say you're bringing them to Christianity, you baptizing them, right? Like you're not like stealing people, we're saving them, we're bringing them to Christianity. But a lot of white people still believe that. They believe like if black people weren't stolen and brought to America, that we would be living in huts. Like they don't even white people still believe like that most of Africa still lives in huts and don't have electricity and just spend all day, I guess, playing drums. I guess I don't know.
So you tell me that Tarzan isn't real?
I don't think so. Right? Like first of all, like if Tarzan, like it took a white man to go there and learn how to speak to the animals, right?
So before Dr. Doolittle, that's for sure, right?
And the pyramids aren't actually in Africa.
Oh,
nah, like Egypt, they consider Egypt a whole different.
Right, exactly. What are Egypt? We're not there. There's some sort of hybrid. They're dark white people.
Y'all are so bad.
And they live in an isolated time-space continuum on the top of Africa, but it's not really Africa.
Well, in a sense,
don't ask any more questions.
Yeah, in a sense, though, they're right, because like part of the reason for that Egyptian people are lighter is because like so many Greeks and Romans and people from all over the world came there to study, that it was like a multicultural society, and so they think like they don't argue that Egypt is not in Africa. They just say the Egyptians aren't Africans or they aren't black, which is a weird argument. But they never argue that all of the knowledge that they came to get came from the Egyptians. Like all of those people, those white people, like the Pythagoras and all of those people, Homer and Plato, they came to, in Alexander the Great, they came to Egypt to learn things, right? And then they would take that knowledge, because black people didn't believe in this idea of proprietary ownership of information. They would just say, oh yeah, you can sit here and learn stuff. And like even the idea of intellectual property is kind of a white European thing that came out of the 1400s, which begat capitalism, right? Like the idea of owning ideas, right?
Yes, the idea of owning ideas
started by glassmakers. And that is what begat capitalism.
Absolutely. So we talked about it in terms of critical race theory. We talked about, let's say, book banning, that stuff. So I got to throw this out to you, Michael. Can, let's say, Black AF history be used as a tool in education? What are your thoughts? And I think it should be, but what are your thoughts?
Well, there are, aside from like the implication in Black AF, there are like it's a PG book, right? Like it's not curse words aside from like maybe the slurs that was lobbied against black people. There's some quotes in there about it, but other than that, it's totally PG. And there are teachers all across America who've been emailing me, who's showing me curriculums that they're using that book. Colleges, I've spoken to college classes. I think Jackson State is going to be like college-wide book for Black History Month next year.
So
Wow,
you've already taken that place, and it's our salvo in the war against critical race theory. but it's wrapped in humor and culture, which is like I said, you use our two superpowers to sneak it by them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Michael, and NightWatchman, we're running out of time, so I got to ask some parting thoughts. Yes, there will be another cookout, another read. We'll look at doing a live version of Michael at a cookout. But in the meantime, what are your parting thoughts for the listeners here, man?
Well, I just want them to know that, like, my parting thought is that all of the stuff that they say about Black people, 99% of it is not true, and history shows that. But the other thing is, like, the most interesting thing about Black people to me is, again, that everything that can be done to people have been done to us, and we are still here, and we're still thriving, and that is why there is so much pushback. Like, it's like a race, and they see us getting closer, and now their only thing that they can do is try to trip us. Right? Like, they don't even want to run anymore. Like, let's just stop them from winning.
Gotcha. And to quote another professor, X. Kendi, the only thing wrong with Black people is that we think that there is something wrong with Black people.
Yep, that's the last chapter of my book.
What's
wrong with Black people?
That's it. Michael, brilliant, buddy. Brilliant. Like I said, it was a brilliant listen for me. I loved it from the beginning to the end, and I loved always when you bring together the family, and there's that one Uncle Junior, who has a lot of knowledge and whatnot, and he lays it out there. And sometimes you may not necessarily be ready for him to give it to you in the unvarnished fashion.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. Beautiful, bro. Beautiful. NightWatchman, what are your last words? You gonna take us home?
Well, first of all, salute to the commander of the Black Air Force.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you for your service.
Yes, indeed, Michael. And if there are any follow-ups, you're going to have to let us know already.
I will. I definitely will.
All right.
So you've been listening to Soul Lounge Primetime on WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Also live streaming on YouTube and Facebook. You can find us always on Monday evenings, 7 p.m. on the radio, and 8 o'clock on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks for listening, and join us next week when we have even something more incredible. We can't even tell you what it is yet.
No, we can't. NightWatchman, we are.